Welcome, guys, to Monday Nights Live. My name is Dr. Nathan Thompson. We're going to talk about weight loss resistance, why it is a symptom. And so if you're joining us, make sure that you say hello. Make sure that you let me know also where you are watching from. And let me know, guys, your thoughts when we talk about a topic that so many people have struggled with, which is weight loss resistance. So I'm going to give you a different perspective today when it comes to weight loss resistance and why it is a symptom of other things that are going on in the body. Hopefully this makes sense. And if you are watching me, guys, please let me know where you're watching from. And also make sure that you wave, say hello, just so I know that there are people that are in fact out there. I love to see where people are watching from. It is awesome to see people from Brazil, from Tennessee, from Washington, all over the continental United States, but actually all over the globe, which is just absolutely awesome. So while I wait, for people to jump on, and while everybody starts to jump on now, there we go. Having a little problems with our software. Make sure that you go over to YouTube and follow us. If you're on Rumble, follow us over there. On Instagram at Dr. Nathan Thompson, and also TikTok. Okay, YouTube, Rumble, we string like long platform or long version type of videos like this, and then Instagram and TikTok. We'll post a lot shorter videos that are 90 seconds long or something like that, which allows people to debate quite a bit more. So I can see that people are joining us. So I think that in fact it is working. So make sure, guys, you can go back and watch the replay of this video on YouTube and Rumble. We'll make sure that we get it uploaded over there as well. And then make sure you follow us on Instagram, like all of our wonderful people on Instagram, and also TikTok, which is the Wild West, I guess, of social media. All right. So, guys, just a couple announcements. Tomorrow night is, in fact, if you're in the Chicagoland area, tomorrow night is our inflammation talk that's going to be at Exemplify Health Center. This is an in-person event. You can go to the top of the page if you're on Facebook, or you can go to our link tree if you're on Instagram, or even on YouTube. You can go to our link tree and you can register for upcoming events at Exemplify Health Center, which is our inflammation talk. And can you register for that? If you're from the Chicagoland area, please make sure that you get registered for that. This is an in-person event. So get registered for that in person if you're from the Chicagoland area. And I know that a lot of people have actually asked me, Dr. Nate, come on. I am not from the area. How on earth am I going to be able to work with you? Well, we are going to open up a few spots when it comes to that, just because I am in full-time practice. But so if we open up any for people that are outside of the practice within the continental USA, then just please make sure if you do want to work with me and you want to know more about inflammation and about how we start to see things differently from a health perspective, then you can get registered for our online webinar, which is going to be on Tuesday, June 20th at 6 p.m. This is Central Standard Time. So all you have to do is just go to the Linktree link, or if you're on Facebook, just go to the top of the page. You'll see the link on there, and you can get registered for that. That will be 2 weeks from tomorrow. And so this will be a webinar event. And then when you watch that webinar at the end, we'll give you kind of instructions on what you need to do in order to start working with us and for us to be able to provide a little bit different approach when it comes to your health. So let's go ahead and let's get into it. All right. I know there's a lot of debate on when it comes to weight loss. You have some camps that say weight loss is easy. You just don't eat so much. Okay. And then you have people say, well, I've tried that and then I stopped and then it just, grinded to a halt. And some people say, well, it's my thyroid. My thyroid is having a lot of issues. And so everybody is debating on what the true cause of weight loss resistance is, what it is, and, what it's not. And then I'm going to help you see it from a different perspective, because there really isn't just one thing that is involved. And I'm going to show you all of the different factors that you need to consider if you are having some issues when it comes to weight loss resistance. But I'm going to tell you this: weight loss resistance is a symptom. So when people have tried, quote unquote, everything, then they're going to say, well, then I guess what I'm going to be, I'm going to wait for the next miracle drug that's going to be coming onto market, which we know what those are. We know the different kind of drugs: Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, all of these type 2 diabetes drugs. Mounjaro, I believe, has now been actually formulated for weight loss only. It's a GLP-1 and a GIP agonist. But I'm going to show you, if you go back to the first part of the video that we did last week, and I said, I have a lot of reservations, and here's why. If you just understand the physiology, I even had a lot of people who were currently doing it, and they had a lot of not nice words for me. And I asked them one simple question. I said, they said, "Well, I've lost weight and I'm doing great." I said, "Awesome, I'm happy for you. What's your fasting insulin levels?" And every single one of them said their fasting glucose levels. I said, "No, no, no, not your fasting glucose. What's your fasting insulin levels?" So, how much insulin do you need in order for you to be able to get your glucose down to that amount? And not one of them could actually answer what their fasting insulin levels are. Because if your doctor's not measuring fasting insulin, then secretly they could be making you a lot worse. And that's why you need to be on these medications forever. It's why you need to be, they keep increasing the dose, increasing the dose. And then finally, when you hit your weight loss goal, you have to be on a maintenance dose. And they will boldly say you need to be on a maintenance dose forever, because we found that when we take people off, the weight actually goes back to almost where it was before. And that's because with those medications I talked about in part one, they're making people extremely insulin resistant. Okay. So let's look at how weight loss resistance, or the inability to lose weight, is really, really just a symptom. So, how do people lose quote unquote weight? We're not talking about fat loss. We're talking about your gravitational pull on the scale. So here's where weight loss could actually happen. And this is not an exhaustive list, but it can start to clue you in as far as the reasons why people can be weight loss resistant, or if they in fact do lose weight, where it could actually be coming from. So number one, I know that when we start working with people, will come in and they're super excited. They're like, "Wow, I lost so much weight. I lost 15 pounds in the first month." And I say, "Congratulations. You're just less inflamed, and you're going to have less water weight when it comes to inflammation, particularly if you have a lot of inflammation around the joints or the gastrointestinal system, because if you're injured, you're going to have more water, you're going to have more swelling." The other thing is too, is where you can actually lose a lot of water weight is, let's say that if you started really restricting your sugars. Okay. So let's say you might have done a 5-day fast or a 3-day fast, or if you started to do keto, or you started to do like really restrict your carbohydrates. A lot of the weight loss that happens has to do with your body starting to pull glycogen, which is your stored sugar in your muscles and in your liver, and then using that as an energy source. But for about every gram of glycogen that you store, it also pulls about 3 to 4 grams of water, which can come to anywhere depending on how much you can store, which is about 600 to 700 grams, can be 5, 6, 7 pounds of water weight. You guys ever wonder that when someone says, "Oh, I ate bad last night and I gained 5 pounds," and everybody thinks that it's fat? No, it's water. Most likely it's inflammation, but it could also be if you ate a bunch of sugar and your glycogen stores were depleted, and then you actually stored some extra glycogen and it carried some water with it. So if you gain 5 to 7 pounds, on your vacation, it's not fat. It is most likely water and inflammation. And here's another thing too. Another thing is because can your thyroid affect your metabolism? Yes, your thyroid actually can. If you look at someone who's hyperthyroid, you'll actually see that they lose weight. See that their skin gets oily, their hair grows faster, nails grow faster, because metabolism goes up. Well, the same can be said if people are hypothyroid. So their metabolism starts to go down, especially if they have undiagnosed hypothyroidism, which most of the doctors, if you're going and getting testing regarding to see if you have hypothyroid or not, is they're doing basically one test or two, rarely ever three, in order to try to figure out why you are hypothyroid. Their answer is just take some synthetic T4. That doesn't get to the problem or the reason why it's happening as well. See, what's so interesting, guys, is you'll even see that even liver metabolism slows down. The reason why is if you look at hypothyroidism, if someone has triglycerides that are extremely elevated, and there shouldn't actually be a reason why their triglycerides are elevated, one of the first places that I look is maybe they have undiagnosed hypothyroidism. So that's why if you have elevated triglycerides, if your doctor's not measuring it, please ask them to go back and retest them or test them a little bit deeper. And that way, whoops, I just went way through. Let's do this. There we go. You can have hypothyroidism, and but you have to go deeper than just being on some kind of synthroid or on T3. Okay. or T4. So let's go over the next thing, which can be toxicity. This has been a lot of technical difficulties tonight. But toxicity can play a role in weight loss resistance. And the reason why is people will bash the idea of toxicity and detoxification. I'll go over that in just a second. But if the liver isn't working the way that it's supposed to, remember the liver is responsible for converting fat into water and energy, which is why a lot of people, they may do everything that they can in order to lose weight. They get to a certain point and then everything just stops all at once. That can be an issue. And I'm going to talk about that too. And then obviously insulin resistance, which can be due to having just dumping insulin. And what's required for insulin? Sugar, but also stress can play a role in that. There's a couple other things that I'm going to go over. But again, is the more that you try to stimulate a hormone, the more that those receptors for that hormone, i.e. insulin, will downregulate, and you'll need more of that hormone in order to elicit the same response, which is why they keep jacking up the medication when it comes to weight loss medication. And even if you look at someone who's properly medically managed, reason why the medications that they take, they just keep increasing the doses or switching over to something that's going to be more powerful. So again, how do these popular weight loss medications work? Ozempic, Mounjaro, these GLP-1 agonists, Wegovy. How do they actually work? Well, if you look at the mechanism of action, number one, the reason why they do work, and remember this, I didn't say that people don't lose weight. I also question, it is weight loss, but is it actual fat loss? Or is it some fat and a lot of muscle mass as well, which shouldn't happen. I'll show you what we do in order to measure to see liver health, to see what a person is actually losing. So how do these popular weight loss medications, how on earth do they work? Well, number one, go ahead and just read it. They slow gastric emptying, which means they're slowing down the movement of food from emptying from the stomach, okay? And this is what's interesting is people reached out to me after the video and they're like, oh my gosh, I went on this and I had so many side effects. And the side effects are called gastroparesis, which means slowed stomach emptying. And I'm going to explain to you just in a second why that is. So they slow gastric emptying, number one. Number two, they increase insulin secretion. So they're stimulating the beta cells of the pancreas to release more and more insulin. One of the reasons why I have a problem with that is, well, your body can only keep up with demanding more insulin. What if those cells just poop out? Can you have pancreatic fatigue? And the answer is yes, you in fact can. Similar to how a person under a tremendous amount of mental stress can actually have adrenal fatigue. It's not as common as people say that it is, but yes, your adrenals can get very fatigued and you can drain your resources and not have enough of the constituents in order to be able to make certain hormones. So this is in fact how they work. Now, why do people have side effects while they're being on some of these popular weight loss medications? I want you to think of this. If one of the effects or how they work, or mechanism of action, how they work, is by delaying stomach emptying or gastric emptying, then the problem is you have to ask the question, what if you go into it and already had problems with delayed gastric emptying in the first place? Wouldn't these medications even delay and slow it down even further and cause some undesirable physiological reactions? Remember this, a medication always manipulates. It always manipulates. It's true with high blood pressure. So if your blood pressure goes down to normal and then you take a blood pressure medication, it's going to reduce it now. It's not going to say, hey, you don't need it right now. Let's just go ahead and just kind of cancel the effect here. No, it's going to work anyway. And so that's why we've had people who his blood pressure is actually normalized and then they're still on their medications and then it goes even lower. And then they say, oh my goodness, I am really fatigued and I'm very dizzy. What's going on here? And I'm like, well, you probably don't need your blood pressure medication. You should probably talk to your doctor so that they can be able to get you off of it. So for these people who have such terrible symptoms on being on some of these GLP-1 agonists, they might have already had problems with gastric emptying. And then when they went on the meds just actually, in fact, made it worse. So the question is is what delays gastric emptying. So, what delays the movement of food from the stomach into the duodenum, into the next part of your gastrointestinal system? Well, here's the first thing, it's stress. So, look at the physiological response of stress. Look at the physiological response of what happens when you go into fight or flight. So, what does stress do? It slows down the movement of your gastrointestinal system. It decreases stomach acid, and which is not a good thing because that will inhibit the sterilization of food and inhibit the breakdown of proteins into smaller amino acids. So, stress, guys, if you really do want to wreck your gastrointestinal system, be stressed. Either have mental, physical, or have a lot of chemical stressors that are going on. And then, number two, what also can delay gastric emptying is, in fact, also medications. So, being on certain pain medication like opioids, that's why they have something known as opioid induced constipation. Don't worry, they have a new drug for that as well. SSRIs or antidepressants can cause delayed gastric emptying. And guys, if you see people who are on an SSRI, they always will have some problem either with the ability to be able to stay asleep, or they'll have a problem with their bowels as well. But blood pressure meds and allergy meds can also delay gastric emptying. So if you're on those meds and then you start to go on a weight loss medication, this is why you can have such undesirable symptoms as a result. But getting back to these medications, remember, they first became popular for about 20 years ago because of type 2 diabetes. So what they said is, wow, this is starting to lower people's blood sugar quite a bit. And wow, people are actually maybe losing some weight on there. So maybe we should repurpose this medication as a weight loss drug. So essentially, the very same things that they are using in order to try to get a person's blood sugar under control, which is actually just buying time while it continues to get worse. Essentially, what they are doing is they're treating weight loss the same way that they are treating type 2 diabetes. But remember this, medically appropriate treatment of type 2 diabetes just leads to more meds and worsening insulin resistance. Let me give you an example. Someone comes in. If someone has a problem with their blood sugar, most of the time, doctors are just measuring their fasting glucose, and they just wait until they lose control, the patient lose control of their fasting glucose. Some of them will actually look at what is known as A1C, which is a 90-day basically blood sugar average that's taken so that you don't, almost get in a car accident before you get your fasting blood sugars and you see it spike because you're in a stress state. But they'll do A1C, but even that's not enough, because what you really should be looking at is you should be looking at your fasting insulin levels. So if you guys understand A1C, at 5.7, they call it pre-diabetic, okay? Now, ideally, it should be at under 5.4, because 5.4 and above, according to the Journal of Neurology, says, hey, as soon as we see A1C at 5.4, we actually will see accelerated brain atrophy, which means, does elevated blood sugars play a role in the nerve system? The answer is yes. They will cause brain atrophy, and that's why diabetic neuropathy is one of the first symptoms that can take place with untreated or uncorrected blood sugar issues. So, once they decide, oh, you have some problems with some blood sugar control, here's the first thing that they will give is metformin. What does metformin do? It helps a person become more sensitive to insulin. And when that doesn't work, then they're going to do things that are going to stimulate more insulin secretion coming from the pancreas versus some of these drugs, but then even things like Ozempic and things like that. But then once that fails, and if that person does live long enough, then it will fail. And then finally, the end result is going to be on injectable insulin. And I've had people coming in on injectable insulin that's gotten so bad, their doctor led them to that point where they are on injectable insulin 90 to 100 units. And I've had people come in where their insulin levels are at 900. And it wasn't coming from what their pancreas was making. It was coming from what they had to inject into their body. And the sad thing is that they still were a type 2 diabetic. So think of this. If they are making type 2 diabetes, just basically covering it up, only to lead to a progression that continues to make it worse, maybe the same thing has happened when it comes to even weight loss. Even though you see a number change on the scale, long term, will it lead to very detrimental effects? In my opinion is that yes, it will. And remember, the longest study that they've ever really done on these popular weight loss medications like Mounjaro is in fact for 68 weeks. Okay. So show me the long-term data on that. In fact, for a lot of things, you'll see that they really don't study it for a long period of time. But just remember, all of those drugs that they have taken off the market were first approved, but just like with some popular acid reflux medications, they started to give warnings on it only because it was causing all other issues. But that came out about 15 to 20 minutes later, or years later. Same thing when you look at some of these arthritis medications, like Vioxx, for example. They actually knew that it was going to cause an increase in heart attack and strokes. They hid the data, but it just didn't come out for 5, 6, 7 years after that. And they had made enough money so that they could be able to pay off the lawsuits that ensued because of unnecessary heart attacks, strokes, and deaths. So how can you do the same things without having to manipulate your physiology with some of these drugs? Well, what are the things that you can do in order to slow your gastric emptying? Okay. Well, here's a novel idea. Eat foods that take longer to digest. And no, a Snickers bar is digested pretty quickly, and a Butterfinger and an Oreo. So eat foods that take longer to digest. What takes longer to digest? Protein and fat. Not only that, but fruits and vegetables will take a longer time to digest. Vegetables will take a longer time to digest. And the reason why is because they are not simple sugars, they're branch sugars. And so they will take longer to break down. They also won't spike your blood sugar like glucose or a very simple sugar. But here's another cool thing. How many of you have actually heard of apple cider vinegar? And apple cider vinegar, the acetic acid in apple cider vinegar, will also start to slow down gastric emptying. Okay. Maybe this is also true. And there's other reasons why. If you want to slow down your gastric emptying and you want to see how long your transit time takes, if it is at 6, 7, 8, or 10 hours, things are moving through you way too quickly. Usually what you can do is eat some corn and then you'll see that you poop it out, and that'll help you to see how long your transit time is. Because remember, when you eat corn, you don't really digest it, and that's why you see it undigested within your stool. So eat foods, guys, that take longer to digest, which means having high quality sources of protein, high quality sources of fat, fruits and veggies, and yes, even apple cider vinegar. Number 2, remember what these medications do is that they increase insulin secretion. And I say this, if someone is nicotine resistant, I'm not going to tell them just to smoke instead of 1 pack, 2 packs so that they can feel the effects of nicotine. I'm going to say you need to become more sensitive to it. So how do you become more sensitive to the hormone insulin, which means that I don't need as much of it in order to lower my blood sugars? Well, here's what you can do. Number 1, stop eating your sugars. So stop eating very simple sugars that are quickly digested and quickly absorbed. And that's why, as a general rule, if you look at the glycemic index, don't eat any foods that have a glycemic index of over 50 and shoot for under 50. This is actually where, this probably eliminates a lot of fruits. Yep, it eliminates a lot of grains. And what does it leave you with? Basically about meats and veggies. That's about it. However, it's a great way. And we have seen people over and over and over again how they increase their insulin sensitivity. And in fact, in as little as 2 to 3 weeks as a result. Number 2, high intensity exercise. This is going to be, as far as insulin sensitivity, this is going to be superior than doing long duration, moderate intensity exercise in which you're carrying a conversation. Number 3, control your stress. Easier said than done, right? So it's you need to be less stressed. That's why we'll actually put people on sedatives in order for them, especially if they're going through a tremendous amount of mental stress, things like California poppy, kava, things like that. But when you do have a stress response, the cortisol response begins to mobilize your stored sugars. So, and that can cause a perpetual elevation of your stored sugars, which then you're going to have a corresponding insulin release if you're not using those sugars. Meaning, if a bear is running after you, you sure as heck are going to use those sugars. But if it's a mental stressor, you're not going to be using that in the form of extra movement. And so you need something in order to put it back in, which is going to be insulin. And then the fourth thing is make sure that you are producing what is known as enough short chain fatty acids. What are those? Those are the metabolites of what's coming off of your microbiome, meaning you need food like insoluble fiber that feeds the microbiome, and then their metabolic byproduct are known as short chain fatty acids, which play a role in insulin sensitivity. Here's some science actually behind it. Okay. So number one, this comes from the University of Turku. This was about 6 years ago, and it was called High Intensity Interval Training Rapidly Improves Diabetics' Glucose Metabolism. They actually said that high intensity interval training increases glucose metabolism in muscles as well as insulin sensitivity in type 2 diabetes. Now, here's what's the kicker. Just after a 2-week training period, the glucose uptake in thigh muscles return to a normal level. So when people say, yeah, I can't get my diabetes under control, I can't get my blood sugars under control, or I'm having a problem with weight loss and I'm continuing to have a problem with fat gain, well, how many of you have truly done high intensity interval type training? I would say not a lot of people do, not a lot of people want to, because it's kind of painful. And you're going to have to do painful things in order to be able to increase your insulin sensitivity. Now, here's another one. Acute physiological stress results in the rapid development of insulin resistance. This was a study that they did in rats. They said in the beginning of the abstract, they say in recent years, the role of chronic stress and depression as independent risk factors for decreased insulin sensitivity and the development of diabetes have been increasingly recognized. Basically, what they did is they took rats and they gave them basically shock therapy on their foot, which sounds, I know, a little bit traumatizing, which it was, in order to elicit a physiological stress response. Here's what they found. They found it was associated with impaired glucose metabolism in these mice that were shocked, suggesting a mechanism by which psychological stress may influence glucose metabolism. The present results indicate that psychological stress induced by electric shock or an acute stress can acutely alter hepatic or liver responsiveness to insulin and affect whole body glucose metabolism. So when was the last time that your doctor talked to you about stress and in weight gain? When was the last time they just said, just start exercising more, start by walking instead? Nope. You need to actually button up your bridges and start doing some high intensity interval type training. Okay. But a lot of times doctors won't tell you to do that because they don't do it themselves. And a lot of people, they'd feel disingenuous by recommending something that they have no idea about, nor have they actually done it themselves, nor I don't know how many of them actually exercise at all. Here is about blood sugar control and short chain fatty acid. So modulation of short chain fatty acids as a potential therapy method for type 2 diabetes mellitus. Here's what they say. Short chain fatty acids, remember what I said before, metabolites coming from the microbiome when you feed it insoluble fiber, increase insulin sensitivity and promote glucose homeostasis. So modulation of short chain fatty acids could provide a unique approach in the treatment of type 2 diabetes mellitus. So they're saying, hey, maybe it even has to do something with your microbiome. Look at all of the different things that I said, which makes you wonder, wow, the body is miraculous, and see how all these gears work together just when we're talking about insulin resistance leading to weight loss resistance as well. So here's the question. I know that you guys want to ask this, are there foods and supplements, Dr. Nate, that help with insulin secretion? So are there things just like these medications that can help with the pancreas in releasing more insulin? The answer is yes. So some of these things are actually stimulate GLP-1, which then stimulate insulin secretion. How about this? Olive oil. How about coconut oil? How about avocados? And how about this one, which I don't know if you've ever heard about, but gymnemic acids, gymnema. So gymnema actually comes from India, and gymnema stands for the sugar destroyer. And how gymnema actually works is it slows the transport of sugar across the gastrointestinal lining, number one. And then number two, it actually can increase and regenerate the beta cells of the pancreas. So it can stimulate more insulin secretion, but rather than causing them to die out, they can start to regenerate those beta cells and help them to start to work better. We have seen this confirmed on post-testing of someone who was a type 2 diabetic that was actually had pancreatic fatigue. How did we know that? Because we tested insulin, and then we also tested another marker to see if her pancreas was even making insulin on its own. It's very little. And when we post-tested, we saw that it started to pick up a little bit based on what we were doing in order to help her. So look at gymnema. So gymnema sylvestre, administration on glycemic control, insulin secretion, and insulin sensitivity in patients with impaired glucose tolerance. So here's what they found from this article that was done. This was, again, 3 years ago, May 27, 2020. So this is fairly recent as well. So gymnema sylvestre administration in patients with impaired glucose tolerance decreased OGTT and decreased A1C, increasing insulin sensitivity. There were also improvements in their anthropometric measures and their lipid profile. What do we mean by that? It's kind of a big word, but in their basic measurements as far as weight and waist circumference, things like that. And then also with their lipid profile as well. So it improved their lipid profile. Gosh, I hope it doesn't work so good that it has to replace statin drugs, because a lot of people are going to be out of a job, and Lord knows they wouldn't want that to happen. Now, are there benefits that actually help not only with insulin secretion, but are there supplements and foods that can actually help with insulin sensitivity? Well, I kind of alluded to it before, but here's one that everybody asks me every single week is, well, what do you think about berberines? And I say, yeah, they're good, but you have to consider some other things before you decide that you're going to just dump this into your body. So if you look at the two types that are the highest in berberines are going to be golden seal and Oregon grape. Golden seal will be the highest amount, but what does it do? It helps with insulin sensitivity. And in fact, it works very similar to metformin without all of the gastrointestinal side effects. If you don't believe me, go to WebMD, type in metformin, and then look at the reviews for metformin, and they are funny and sad at the same time. So golden seal can actually, yes, do that, but it just so happens that golden seal can also, if you are taking it very long term, I'm talking about over 5 or 6 months, is that it can kill off the microbiome. So it can do that. Oregon grape is a little bit more gentle. So if we do give people something known as golden seal, we don't have them on it for a very long period of time, nor do they really need to be on it for a long period of time, because when we retest in 3 to 4 months, we will see that their A1C goes down and their insulin levels, if they're doing what they need to do. And then the other thing has to do with fiber. So does fiber play a role? The answer is absolutely. So look at this. This comes from PubMed. This was an article that was done 2021, so 2 years ago. Berberine in the treatment of diabetes mellitus, a review. So berberine is an alkaloid found in plants like golden seal. It is neuroprotective, anti-inflammatory, hypolipidemic activities. The research proves that it strongly impacts carbohydrate metabolism. The compound also protects the pancreatic beta cells and increased sensitivity to insulin in peripheral tissues via the induction of GLT-1 and GLT-4 and insulin type receptor activity. So in the intestines, it also blocks alpha glucosidase, contributing to glucose absorption decrease. So it also decreases the absorption of your sugars. Its interference in intestinal flora reduces levels of monosaccharides and suppresses diabetes mellitus complication development. See, so they even say that it does can interfere with certain microbiomes, in which we do use it for people who have a lot of bacterial overgrowth, which is why when we use something, we're looking at how can this person get the maximal benefit versus saying, oh, they have one problem going on and let's go ahead and dump that into it, because a lot of things will work on multiple things. So you got to be a little bit careful as far as how you are doing it. Now, here's something in regards to fiber. So total insoluble and soluble fiber dietary intake and insulin resistance and blood pressure in adolescence. This was about 5 years ago, and here's actually what they said. So from the results from this article is they looked at 754 adolescents, okay? This is what's absolutely crazy with how kids eat and how we actually promote this and how we actually say, go ahead and eat whatever you want. It doesn't matter as long as you feel good about yourself. But this was a study that involved 754 adolescents. They found that only 2 adolescents met their daily fiber intake recommendation out of 754. It's no wonder our kids are so absolutely sick, how they are overweight, how they are obese, and why they have so many other issues when it comes to their mental health, gastrointestinal health, their skin health. Only 2 out of 754, if you can actually believe that. So furthermore, what they found was insoluble and soluble fiber intakes were inversely associated with fasting insulin, meaning the more fiber that they consumed, the lower their fasting insulin levels, which I found pretty awesome that they, instead of measuring A1C, they were actually getting to the root of it, which was going to be your fasting insulin. So am I a fan of fiber? The answer is yes, I am. So when people will say, well, what do you think about the carnivore diet? I say, hey, I've actually have put people on a carnivore diet, but that was based on a couple of different tests and they did wonderful. But for the people who love the carnivore, I have also put people on mostly vegetarian diet. There's a reason why, and they also did wonderful with that. And the reason why is that any doctor that says this is the diet plan that you need to use, then they're not basing it off of individual testing. They're basing it off of massive amounts of studies, and they're just taking it as a general rule. Remember, when you look at it as a whole, they're saying more people did well than didn't do well, but there's still with people that didn't do well on it. And you have to figure out the reason why versus just giving general rules and general guidelines. So look at this. How can you increase your soluble fiber? This is an exhaustive list, but here's some good sources of soluble fiber. Broccoli, avocados, Brussels sprouts, carrots. It's a good source of soluble fiber. And then insoluble fiber are resistant to digestion. Some of the best ones are actually chicory root and also potato starch, not potato, the sugar that's coming from potato, but the extracted potato starch, not potato flour, but potato starch. So sometimes for people, I say, hey, you know what would be really good for you is start getting 3 to 4 teaspoons of some potato starch. And that actually has to do with what we're doing with stool testing. Just go to the grocery store, find Bob's Red Mill potato starch. You get a big bag of it, costs about, I don't know, 10, 12 bucks, and it'll last you 2 months. And that's a good thing that you can start feeding your microbiome in order to give the microbiome the food that's necessary in order to help with short chain fatty acid production. One of the important ones is known as butyrate. Okay. So we talked about, here's how you can actually do this on your own instead of spending $1,350, every single month for this weight loss medication. And it's going to cost you a whole heck of a lot less. Well, Dr. Nate, my insurance pays for it. Well, here's the thing. Somebody does pay for the insurance, all right? Somebody does pay for the insurance. Well, my employer does. Oh, that's interesting. Your employer pays for it. Okay. And somebody else pays for it too. And if you have a government healthcare program, we all pay for it. So the problem is that I wish that the government would want people and say, hey, why don't you get a gym membership? This is really awesome. Or, instead, we're going to help you to feed yourself awesome, amazing food. But they don't do that. And I wonder why. Let me know what your comments and thoughts are about that. But wait, guys, there's more. All right. Just like with all of those infomercials. But wait, there's more. This is something that's interesting as well, because how many people have actually been on a weight loss journey and they have lost weight, and then they stop. This happens in our patients quite a bit. After about 6 weeks, about 8 weeks, they'll say, well, I did lose like quite a bit, but over the last 3 to 4 weeks, it's just completely stopped. What do I do next? And I'm like, I'm glad that you asked that question, because here's what we already have scheduled for you. So this comes from The Lancet, and the title of this article, and this is a little bit older, from 15 years ago, Environmental Pollution and Diabetes, a Neglected Association. Here's what they said, coming from The Lancet. Using cross-sectional data from the 1999 to 2002 U.S. National Health and Examination Survey, Duck-Hee Lee and colleagues reported a strong correlation between insulin resistance and serum concentrations of persistent organic pollutants, especially for the organochlorine compounds, chlorinated compounds. This can also interfere with thyroid function because it's in the same family as iodine. This result has a surprise for many people in diabetes research, because most studies to data focus on the effects of genetics and westernization of dietary habits and lifestyle, while ignoring the potential effect of xenobiotics. Now, here's what they concluded. Chronic dietary exposures to and accumulation of low concentrations of environmental pollutants within the body might be associated with diabetogenesis. Ignoring the potential effects of xenobiotics therefore risk ignoring a potentially crucial component in the study of type 2 diabetes, obesity, and metabolic syndrome. How many of your doctors are ignoring the fact that maybe the reason why you have weight loss resistance is because you are extremely toxin? I love it when people say this. Yeah, but you got a liver. Your liver will do it. Of course, your liver will do it. Your liver will do it until it can't do it anymore. And so how is the body supposed to rid itself of toxins? And guess where toxins are stored? They're stored not in your liver. They're stored in fat cells. So even researchers are looking at this, but no one will ever tell you about the role of toxicity in weight loss resistance. So where are toxins stored? They're not stored in your liver. They're stored in your fat cells. Where are toxins metabolized? In your liver. Stay with me on this. So could it be that the body is protecting you from toxic exposure that the liver cannot properly eliminate? Could it also be that the reason why you constantly hit a weight loss roadblock is because you are in fact toxic? Could it also be that a solution is to feed the liver the proper nutrients and enzymes in order to be able to metabolize those toxins and pull them from fat and bioconvert them into phase 1 and phase 2 and elimination from the kidneys and the gastrointestinal system? And that is known as detoxification. Now, there's a lot of people out there that are calling detoxification when it in fact is not detoxification. They're calling it detoxification when it's a colon cleanse. They're calling it detoxification when it's basically taking cayenne pepper and lemon water. Detoxification requires making a toxin from fat soluble to water soluble, and then being able to eliminate it from the body. And that requires a pathway, certain pathways within the liver. Yes, it's toxins. Yes, it's hormones. Yes, it's how the body gets rid of those things, including medications. And so, yes, detoxification is a real thing. Your liver does do it every single day, which is why when people say you don't need it because the liver and the kidneys detox for free. Well, that depends on the dose of it. And I want you to think of this. What has happened over the last 50 years, 100 years that we weren't doing beforehand? Are we exposed to more pesticides? Are we exposed to more herbicides, i.e. Roundup? Are we exposed to more toxins in plastics? Are we exposed to more volatile organic compounds that are in our house, that are in our personal care products, that are in our bedding, that are in our carpeting? Are we exposed to a lot more of that than we were medications 100, 150, 200 years ago? And remember, our bodies haven't changed in 150, 200, 500, 1,000 years. Maybe our bodies were created in order to handle a certain level of toxic exposure, but certainly not the level of toxic exposure that's happening in today's environment. Maybe people do in fact need to detox, because remember, that depends on the dose. And if you're getting too high a dose, then how on earth is your liver supposed to work the way that it's supposed to if you're not feeding it what it needs in order to properly metabolize toxins and things like that? And this is why detoxification in people is an absolute game changer for a lot of people. And in fact, one of the things that we measure pre and post is we'll actually take body fat percentage as accurate as we can without making them go underwater or do a DEXA scan. And then we'll do it afterwards as well. We know that the liver is doing better when primarily what they lost during detox was in fact fat and not a lot of muscle, which makes me think of this. If you are taking, for example, a GLP-1 GIP agonist, then like Manjaro, then, and you still have a toxic liver, then this may be why I can't find any research as far as fat loss versus just weight loss and looking at a lower BMI. Maybe if you still have a toxic liver, maybe some of the weight loss is actually happening at the muscle and not actually happening as far as true fat loss, which will make your metabolism lower and will also make you weaker as a result. So this is the hierarchy, guys, of weight loss. And if you guys are enjoying this, I want you to do me a favor. Please share this right now. But here's the hierarchy of weight loss, or this is how, through years and years of clinical experience, how we deal with it. Number one, when it comes to what you eat, what you put into your mouth, it first and foremost should actually be non-inflammatory. That's the first and foremost thing. What does he mean by non-inflammatory? What I'm talking about is, have you got your foods tested? That's the first and foremost thing. Why are you so inflamed? And start addressing that. Yes, it can be more than just food allergies. It can be related to gastrointestinal issues. It can be related to a lot of other things. But the first and foremost thing that you have to do is quit causing the scab. Nothing will work right if you keep injuring your body. Nothing will heal if you keep injuring your body, which is why when we say you need to understand inflammation first, make sure that you get to the inflammation talk, or make sure that you get registered for the inflammation webinar. Number two, how we handle nutrition is then helping with their insulin levels. Some people need it, some people don't. Because remember, everybody that we see does not have weight loss concerns. Some people are actually extremely underweight. Weight loss is just one thing that we are working on if a person in fact needs it. So you have to get your insulin levels under control. Number three is then detoxification. Then on top of that, and if you guys watch Instagram, I work out all the time, but I tell a lot of people, stop working out. It's not helping you at this point. It's just another stressor. You need to de-stress the body, but even how you exercise, and we'll add it in when people, once they get a certain result, in order to prevent them from going back to where they were in the first place. And then exercise. And then, guys, lo and behold, do we even talk about, if we even need to, is talk about your macronutrient intake and your caloric intake. Isn't that amazing? That is the last thing I will talk about, and very rarely do I talk about it at all. And so here's the thing. When people say, well, what should it be? 40, 30, 30. What should my caloric intake actually be? Guys, if you are handling the foods for non-inflammatory, for insulin levels, and doing that, you rarely ever have to have a conversation as far as how much you should be eating. And that stuff will take care of itself. Remember this, you have a hormone inside of your body. It's called leptin. And the more weight that you gain, the more hungry you become, because these fat cells secrete leptin, and leptin is supposed to tell your brain to stop eating because we have enough in storage. But the more weight you put on, the more leptin they secrete, and the less leptin sensitive you become, which means now you can't even hear your hunger cues, which means when people say, I just eat all the time, I don't know when to stop. I get it. I understand it, because you're not hearing that hormone. So what happens if you are truly losing fat is that it will start to lower your leptin levels, and it will actually let your hypothalamus start to reset these leptin receptors so that you can get back into tune as far as how much you should be eating and actually listen to your hunger cues. Some people just can't listen to their hunger cues because they are so leptin resistant. And a lot of people, even they message out, reached out to me like, well, since I've been on these drugs, I don't have as much, food chatter that's taking place. And I'm like, congratulations, you probably lost some fat. And the reason why is you're becoming more leptin sensitive as well, but you're probably becoming more insulin resistant based on the physiology and the mechanism of how these medications actually work. So guys, when we're talking about weight loss, the end result should actually be better health. And the number on the scale is just a bonus. Let me say that again. The end result should be better health. The number on the scale is just a bonus. That's just a bonus, which is why we really don't talk about it, and we improve a person's health. And the weight loss is a consequence of, in fact, having better health. And hopefully, guys, since you were watching this, thank you so much for watching this. But hopefully you understood, wow, look at how the body works together with all of these different things. It's just absolutely miraculous. Because when you look at today, traditional healthcare, it's just a this for that approach. If you have this, do this. If you need to lose weight, take this drug. If you have high blood pressure, take this drug. If you have high cholesterol, take this drug. And meanwhile, they never ever look at how the body starts to work together. We call that the Swiss watch principle. So if you are having weight loss issues, I'm going to guarantee you have other issues as well. You probably have hormone issues and or GI issues or skin issues or energy and mood issues. You have one of those things that are going on, which means weight loss is a symptom. Weight loss resistance is a symptom. It's not truly the problem. Guys, please make sure that you share this video. If you made it to this point, if you are watching and you are in the Chicagoland area, please go to the top of our page or go to our profile, Linktree profile, and you will see on there how to register for our inflammation talk in person coming up Tuesday, June 6th, which is tomorrow at 6:00 p.m. So please get registered for it. We do have some space available. We're going to talk about how inflammation, if you do not address that, everything else is going to be a moot point of how it leads to weight loss resistance, how it leads to cancer, how it leads to heart disease, infertility, thyroid issues, type 2 diabetes, autoimmunity, problems with your hormones. And once people understand that and they start to get the big idea, they say, oh, this is something that I always knew, but I just couldn't put the pieces together. And if you are watching right now and you're within the continental United States, then what you can do is you can also go to Linktree profile, go to the top of the page if you're on Facebook, and you can register for our inflammation webinar that's going to be coming up on Tuesday, June 20th at 6:00 p.m. This is Central Standard Time. This is a free to attend the webinar. And also we have a lot of people that reach out to me and say, hey, how can I work with you? We are going to open up a few spots so that we can work with people remotely. But you can go and you can attend the webinar for free, and you will get some email reminders. You'll get some text reminders for that event too. So as long as you register, you'll be reminded of that event that's going to be coming up 2 weeks, almost 2 weeks, and at 6:00 p.m. And this is on Central Standard Time. So guys, I appreciate you joining me. If you enjoyed this video, let me know. If you didn't, hey, let me know as well. And also make sure that you share this video with other people, especially if you got a lot of value from it. Coming up next week, we probably will be doing a question and answer. And so if you do, we'll put a post up there. So if you do have a question, or if you have a question here, you can leave it below. And we'll do our best to answer those questions that have been submitted, or we'll even answer some questions that are submitted live as well. So we'll be going live on Facebook, live on YouTube, live also on Instagram all at the same time. And then hopefully we can get a lot of questions to spend a good hour with you and be able to answer your questions and help you on a better path towards health. So guys, be well, be blessed. I am actually in the middle of a 3-day fast right now. I think I did pretty good not eating for a while. So guys, I hope you have a great rest of your week. I appreciate all of you. Thank you so much for watching. Be well, be blessed, and remember.